The Can't For Your Own World light novels are a series of 3 consecutive volumes taking place 6 months after the conclusion of the Thousand Year Blood War arc. Within these light novels, Shuhei Hisagi is the protagonist, with the antagonist being Tokinada Tsunayashiro, a member of one of the 5 great noble families. Tokinada has created a fresh candidate for the Soul King as he chaotically attempts to build a new royal palace. Many of you will know that Tokinada is the man responsible for murdering Tozen's friend before the events of the very first chapter of the Bleach manga. Well, it turns out that Tokinada was hell-bent on beating Aizen when it comes to scheming and plotting, as he gets up to a variety of interweaving plans which involve characters like Ginjo Kugo. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the role of Ginjo Kugo within the Can't For Your Own World light novels. This is a video that you're definitely going to want to stick around until the very end of, because we'll be deep diving into the past of Ginjo, which is actually revealed within these light novels. I'll be discussing how his interactions with major characters within the Soul Society gives us some key insights into the history of his character. Hopefully by the end of this video, you're going to understand the connection between Ginjo and the now deceased captain Jūshirō Ukitake. So join me as we uncover all of the events which had led to Ginjo Kugo developing such an intense hatred for the Soul Society, and how the Tsunayashiro noble family is deeply connected to the past of Ginjo Kugo. Ginjo Kugo is first introduced in chapter 424 of the manga during the Lost Agent arc. He identifies himself as a Fullbringer, as well as revealing that he is the founder of an organization called Execution, which is a secret group of Fullbringers which operate within the human world. Eventually, within the story, we learn that he was in fact a former substitute Shinigami. Before expanding upon his role within the light novels, I want to briefly explain who he is and what Fullbringers are actually capable of. A Fullbringer is a human who has the ability to freely call upon and manipulate the soul of physical objects. They also have the special ability to share powers with or steal powers from a human Shinigami hybrid. Volume 2, Chapter 12 of the Can't For Your Own World light novels expands upon the history of the Fullbringers, and it is from here where we learn that the Fullbringers' characteristic power was something that had caused them to simultaneously detach from the physical world, as well as it being the chain that had kept them attached to it. By using his Fullbring, Ginjo has the ability to transform his pendant around his neck into a large broadsword. In chapter 433 of the manga, it is revealed that his parents were attacked by a hollow, leaving behind remnants of its power which had resided within his mother, and this is what Ginjo had inherited at his birth. In addition to this, he had also inherited a fragment of the Soul King's body, which is something that we learn happens to all Fullbringers. During the time when Ginjo was a Fullbringer, he became the unsuspecting victim of a plot that was orchestrated by Tokinada Tsunayashiro. Tokinada desired to acquire the corpses of Fullbringers in order to extract the fragments of the Soul King that were within them. This had resulted in a lot of chaos and mayhem, as multiple Fullbringers ended up being slaughtered in order to gain these Soul King fragments. Now this information raises a few questions. Did Tokinada ever answer for the crimes that he had committed? How did Ginjo react when he had found out that Tokinada was responsible for the massacre of Fullbringers? I'm going to carefully go through the journey of Ginjo's character through the Can't For Your Own World light novels. Hopefully we'll be able to answer these questions and appreciate the influence that Ginjo has over the story following the end of the Thousand Year Blood War arc. Following Ginjo's death after his battle with Ichigo in chapter 478, his body was taken back to the Soul Society by Renji. Ichigo intervenes and makes a request to Yamamoto, requesting to bury his body within the human world. So if this had happened, why do we see Ginjo make an appearance during the Thousand Year Blood War arc and even during the Can't For Your Own World light novels? Fullbringers, including Ginjo Kugo, are fundamentally human, so when they die, they transform into souls as part of Bleach's reincarnation cycle. Since Ginjo, Tsukishima, and Giriko were each killed at the hands of a Shinigami, Ginjo was killed by Ichigo, Giriko killed by Kinpachi, and lastly Tsukishima killed by Byakuya, their souls were automatically purified and sent to the afterlife, which of course is the Soul Society. We know that the three of them had eventually set settled within the Rukongai district, and while living there, the three of them were located by Kukaku Shiba and taken back to her residence. In chapter 518, it is revealed that they are training with Ganju Shiba in order to prepare for the second invasion of the Quincy. In chapter 681, we do see Ginjō again briefly during Ichigo's most crucial moments in his final battle against Yhwach. This is where Tsukishima is able to assist Ichigo by repairing his Bankai with his Fullbringer, the Book of the End. We first see Ginjō, Tsukishima and Giriko in the first volume of Can't Fear Your Own World within chapter 2. This is 6 months after the death of Yhwach and the end of the Wandenreich Empire. The three men have an encounter with Hisagi outside of Kukaku Shiba's residence. Through this interaction, Ginjō comes across as a dangerous Shinigami killer. Hisagi reflects over the fact that Ginjō was the very first substitute Shinigami who had eventually turned against the Soul Society and had taken the lives of many Shinigami. So it's understandable why Hisagi feels uneasy while speaking to Ginjō. When he expresses some slight discomfort as he comes face to face with the former substitute Shinigami, Ginjō remains unapologetic when it comes to the actions that he has committed. Despite Ichigo coming to terms with Ginjō's actions, we now understand that the Fullbringers are still not exactly a welcoming presence within the Soul Society. Hisagi confronts Ginjō about why he had betrayed the Shinigami and Ukitake who had actually recruited him. It is from this question that the thread of Ginjō's backstory slowly begins to unravel. This question does take Ginjō by surprise, and as we know, the substitute Shinigami badge that Ukitake had given to both Ginjō and Ichigo served another covert purpose of being a surveillance device. Supposedly, this act alone was enough to anger Ginjō into turning against the entire Gotei 13. Hisagi of course is in the dark as to what really had transpired behind the scenes, as there is more to the story of how Ginjō had rebelled against the Soul Society. So the tense and awkward conversation between Hisagi and Ginjō is comically interrupted by Ganju, who asserts peace between the two parties. Now at the Shiba residence, Ginjō recounts the events of the 1000-year Blood War arc, highlighting the fact that their comrades who had assisted them, Yukio and Riruka, are still residing within the world of the living. The conversation takes a different turn when Kukaku mentions that she does not have any difficulty in accepting the Fullbringers under her roof, even going on to mention that the former captain of the 13th Division, Ukitake, was able to approve of this decision. Hisagi notices here that Ginjō becomes slightly uncomfortable. This is when Ginjō reveals that he was going out of his way not to see Ukitake while he was in the Soul Society. This statement immediately raises alarm bells for readers. We start to realize that these two characters must have some sort of a history together, and it doesn't appear to be a positive one either. Ginjō goes as far as to say that the two of them may have even fought to the death if they did meet, and Hisagi cannot help but to wonder what had happened between them for Ginjō to dislike Ukitake so much. When Hisagi continues to voice some of his concerns, asking what exactly did the Gotei 13 do to him, Ginjō reluctantly begins to reveal more details about his past. In his own words, when he was a substitute Shinigami, Ginjō had Tsukishima alter his past. His altered memories involved a half Shinigami human hybrid who had attempted to remove hollow powers from Fullbringers as a means of giving them somewhat of an ordinary life where they no longer have any powers. He goes on to explain that in this altered timeline, Tsukishima ended up killing this half-human Shinigami hybrid along with all of their friends. What had actually occurred was that no such hybrid being existed. The only substitute Shinigami at the time was Ginjō. If this is the case, then what's the real identity of the person who was responsible for killing all of Ginjō's friends, the Fullbringers? This question hints at a devious person who is pulling the strings behind the scenes. Ginjō reveals a disturbing fact about Tsukishima's Fullbringer ability, the Book of the End. While his power allows him to insert himself into the memories of people, the Book of the End doesn't conjure up people from thin air. This implies that the supposed half-human Shinigami hybrid was in fact one of the Shinigami who Ginjō had killed in the past. This revelation unsettles Hisagi, Ganju and Kukaku as they grapple with the information that is being revealed to them. While Ginjō thinks back over how his Fullbringer friends were killed by the Shinigami, we begin to understand the source of his intense hatred for the Soul Society, which was made worse after he had learned that they were surveilling him via the substitute Shinigami badge. The most upsetting part about all of this is that while Ukitake wasn't responsible for having Ginjō's friends killed, Ginjō never had the opportunity to have a final conversation with Ukitake, so we never found out how much of the mission had stemmed from Ukitake's own orders. At the peak of the battle during the 1000-year Blood War arc, when the Fullbringers had reached the royal palace, Ginjō had wanted to find out why Ukitake had killed his former colleagues. He had wished to speak to him face to face, but unfortunately it was too late. Ukitake by this point had already tragically died after performing the Kamikake ritual, which had ended up releasing Mimihagi, the right arm of the Soul King, from his body. At the end of the conversation, Hisagi Hisagi is doubtful about Ginjo's story, finding it hard to believe that the Shinigami would kill without a just cause. Later in Rukongai, Ginjo is wandering as he notices a commotion around a group of newly arrived souls. Upon investigation, Ginjo notices a large crowd of religious people proclaiming that their faith was right all along about the afterlife. He tries to ignore it as Ginjo thinks that it might just have been a Shinigami that had leaked some knowledge. However, when the crowd notices him, he is shocked when he hears that the religion that they follow is named Execution, which of course was the name that he had given to his group of Fullbringers in the world of the living. He doubts that his old allies will be spreading false information about Execution, but still filled with curiosity, Ginjo decides to question the crowd for more information, unaware that he is stepping foot into a sinister plot that is targeting the Fullbringers. In Volume 2 of Can't For Your Own World, Ginjo is walking on the outskirts of Rukongai towards the Shiba residence when he notices that somebody is watching him and his crew. Initially, he assumes that Hisagi's questioning had drawn the attention of the Gote 13 to them, so they may be here to finish them off, but it appears as though they are being followed by an entirely different enemy. The Quincy Candice catnip is being used as a puppet in order to attack the Fullbringers. Formerly a Sternritter who had belonged to the Vandenreich, Candice had escaped being absorbed by Yuhabak's Ashwalman. However, she had been retrieved by members of the 12th Division, and she isn't alone in this, as Nanana also observes their fight from a distance, and even Meninas joins in the altercation. Mairi has successfully taken over several Quincy who ended up surviving following the second invasion of the Soul Society, and he is now using them to capture the Fullbringers so that he can presumably experiment on them and learn more about their powers. It is pretty funny but also sad to see that Candice and the other Sternritter have been reduced to mere puppets of the research and development unit, but I guess that this is still better than them being either dead or imprisoned. While Candice attempts to capture the Fullbringers alive as per Mayuri's orders, Ginjo, Tsukishima and Giriko put up a better fight against Candice than she had expected. Because of this, she loses her temper and begins to blast the three of them with the full power of the Thunderbolt. However, Ginjo and his companions remain unharmed as Tsukishima had used his Book of the End on a nearby small tree, changing its history to allow it to grow far more so that it could function as a lightning rod in the present. Candice becomes even more frustrated after her attack fails as Ginjo and Tsukishima wonder if the Quincy's attacks are related to their recent investigation into this new religious execution cult within the world of the living. As the battle continues, Candice unleashes her power on the Fullbringers once again when the tree that Tsukishima had used earlier is uprooted by Meninas. Meninas then throws the tree at them, but Giriko activates Time Tells No Lies in order to empower himself as he throws the tree back at the two Quincy. Now with the battle escalating, Ginjo plans to give Tsukishima an opening in order to use Book of the End on the Quincy, but then all of the combatants and observers are distracted when a Garganta opens up nearby and Grimmjow emerges from it, as he angrily demands to fight against Hikone. The appearance of an Arrancar sets the stage for a huge battle, as we suddenly understand that the Soul Society has every race present at the moment, from Shinigami, Quincy's, Arrancars and even Fullbringers. Now when the hollow Iko Mikidomoe arrives on the scene, chaos ensues and the Fullbringers observe from the sidelines. Tsukishima contemplates leaving, but Ginjo pauses to reflect on his doubts concerning the newfound doctrines of execution. He is surprised by how their teachings about the afterlife actually align precisely with Rukongai's reality, as well as the way that the Shinigami perform the Konso. However, there is a section relating to the future which states that in the shadow of chaos, spanning 1000 years, a new king shall be born in order to reign over each of the three realms. Ginjo had initially thought that this was referring to the Quincy's and their king Yuhabak, but Yuhabak's ambition wasn't to rule over the realms. Instead, he had wanted to blur the boundaries between life and death and revert everything back to the original primordial state which had existed before reality was split into three realms. Ginjo then begins to associate this mention of a new king with the individual Hikone. As the battle between Hikone and Ikidomoe ceases, Hikone, the newly introduced Soul King candidate, asks for Ginjo, revealing to him that Tokinada wanted to make a comparison of strength between the two of them. This request is slightly puzzling as Ginjo has never heard of Tokinada. Hikone reveals to the confused Fullbringer that he is in fact a candidate for becoming the next Soul King. A few hours later, after the commotion has settled down, the differing factions decide to make a sort of an alliance between each other. During a meeting at the Shiba residence, the new Captain Commander Shunsui urges the Fullbringers to join forces with the Shinigami for their shared goal of taking down Tokinada. Now fast forward to their arrival within the Valley of Screams, the Fullbringers have not yet decided who to side with, and Ginjo focuses his mind on another task. He is still trying his best to uncover the roots of this newfound religious organization which exists within the world of the living. He asks asks Yukio if he has anything to do with it, as Ginjō then comes face to face with the new leader of the execution cult, who just so happens to be the powerful Fullbringer Ora Michibane. Predictably, the two of them begin to fight as the former substitute Shinigami begins to realize just how powerful Ora Michibane is. He decides to question her about what her goal is in reference to her being the founder of the execution religious cult. Ora mysteriously states that her goal changes depending on what Ginjō is seeking. He asks her what she was expecting from him after he had died and was wandering around Rukongai. Ora responds with a question of her own, asking if Ginjō still wants revenge against the Shinigami, to which he states that it's none of her business. Judging from this interaction between the two of them, it's abundantly clear that Ginjō's entire role within these light novels is to somehow find some closure and justice for his murdered companions by getting revenge on the Soul Society. Ginjō asks if Yukio had informed Ora about his past, but Yukio clarifies that it was Ora who had in fact approached him with knowledge of Ginjō's history. It's here that Ora divulges her identity as Tensho Agata's daughter, a former member of Execution, and because her father had joined the organization, he had wound up dead. Despite this, she doesn't hold any resentment towards Ginjō, but Ginjō remains suspicious about her as he deduces that from their conversation, she is working with Tokinada Tsunayashiro. Ora encourages him to join Tokinada because he is building a new world, one where the Fullbringers can regain their glory once again by joining the stronger side and opposing the Soul Society. Ginjō clearly states that he does not intend to listen to her reasoning as he instructs Tsukishima to use his ability on Yukio. Now, the reason why Ginjō wastes no time in trying to have Tsukishima change Yukio's past is because he believes that the alliance between Yukio and Ora could only have occurred due to some kind of brainwashing or manipulation, alluding to Tokinada having made some threats to him. Now, much to Ginjō's shock, Tsukishima's Fullbringer ability, the Book of the End, ends up being used on him instead. Tsukishima ends up betraying both Ginjō and Giriko by inserting his Fullbring into their bodies, as he proceeds to change their memories. Clearly, this betrayal is as a result of Ora somehow manipulating Tsukishima into doing her bidding. The next time that we see Ginjō and Giriko is in the 23rd chapter of the 3rd volume of Can't For Your Own World. Now, during this particular scene, Tokinada returns from the battle and asks Ora what had happened to the Fullbringers. Yukio reveals his countermeasures that he had used against Tsukishima's Fullbring, which involved Yukio sticking a virus into his own past so that when Tsukishima had attempted to alter his memories, he instead ended up being hacked by Yukio. Following this, Yukio ensured that Tsukishima was able to insert his virus into both Ginjō and Giriko. Later, we see Ginjō and his crew and they appear to be emotionless. Tokinada is content with the outcome of the situation, and it's here that he reveals that Ginjō had been a close candidate for the Soul King after Ichigo, stating that he anticipates that Ginjō will probably be of some use to the Soul King in the future. When Tokinada attempts to show them the Shikai of Kyoka Suigetsu, he fails to invoke its abilities. Just then, Ginjō is able to attack using his Fullbring ability as Tokinada counters with a copied form of Zangetsu, but the blade is unable to withstand the attack from Ginjō. Tokinada tries again to invoke Kyoka Suigetsu's Shikai, but he is once again unsuccessful. Kyoka Suigetsu is a Zanpakuto that is known for its immense power once it is activated, but it does have a caveat. If a target touches Kyoka Suigetsu while it's in its sealed state, then its ability of complete hypnosis is nullified. Another major weakness, which explains why Tokinada cannot copy Kyoka Suigetsu, is because the true potential of complete hypnosis is tied to the immense spiritual pressure that Aizen possesses. So there is every possibility that Kyoka Suigetsu cannot be used by him because he doesn't possess enough spiritual pressure in order to successfully activate and maintain this ability. Now, while Tokinada deals with Ora betraying him, Ginjō on the other hand lunges towards him as Tokinada employs the Gagaku Kairo and Ryujin Jaka flames in order to fend him off, as he then threatens Ora with Hikone's wrath. But this is when Ginjō and the other Fullbringers spring into action as Ginjō activates his Bankai and transforms immediately into his enhanced form, the same one that he had used against Ichigo during the Lost Agent arc. He ends up attacking Tokinada with an excessive amount of spiritual pressure. This leads to Tokinada acknowledging how Ginjō has actually mastered his holo powers. He then begins to taunt Ginjō by asking him why he doesn't just kill him and Hikone and take the throne of the Soul King for himself, since he is more than suitable for being a candidate for the Soul King. Now, there is a reason why Tokinada is saying this. He is trying to test Ginjō, but Ginjō remains wary of his words, understanding the weight of having the role of the Soul King placed onto his shoulders. Tokinada then questions Ginjō by asking him if he knows about how Fullbringers are born. Ginjō correctly guesses that it's through the fragments of the Soul King. Tokinada then breaks into a smile and asks Ginjō what he thinks. If someone such as him, who has the power of Shinigami, Fullbringers and Hollows, were to become the Soul King, then he could destroy or reshape the world exactly as he wishes. Following this revelation, we begin to understand the true role of Ginjo Kugo within the Can't Fear Unworld light novels. He is one of the most likely candidates for becoming the Soul King, and it is obvious that Tokinada would like to use him as a pawn in one of his plans to amass more power in order to take control over the world. Responding to Tokinada that he has no interest in wanting to reshape the world. He may have been an antagonist within the mainline story of Bleach, but he is very different to Aizen and Yhwach. He is of the mind that the Fullbringers will end up reshaping the world into exactly what they want to. Tokinada then asks why is it that Ginjō is helping Aura, asking if Ginjō is still seeking revenge for the murdered Fullbringers from long ago. However, Tokinada then makes one of his most important statements within the Can't Fear Unworld light novels, as he reveals that it was the main branch of the Tsunayashiro family which had ordered the death of the Fullbringers and not him. Ginjō has no way of verifying if this information is true, stating that he has no interest in finding out the truth, because it doesn't matter who had ordered the killing of the Fullbringers, because it wouldn't change the fact that the Shinigami are still his enemy. As the battle continues, Ginjō reveals exactly why he is fighting against Tokinada. It's because Tokinada is the reason why Ukitake did not tell Ginjō the truth about what had really happened. Tokinada responds by suggesting that it was Aura who had informed Ginjō about this information, telling him that she has probably lied to him. However, Ginjō had actually acquired this knowledge through the Fullbringers Yukio and Tsukishima. Now, quite remarkably, Aura had in fact manipulated her own molecular structure so that it could be inscribed onto the back of a business card which she had handed to Yukio. Now, this pattern had contained special information that Yukio was able to access, and the information confirmed which Shinigami family had been responsible for murdering Ginjō's companions from years ago. In exchange for this knowledge, Yukio had agreed to ally himself with Aura in order to deceive Tokinada. Yukio had then prepared for a confrontation with Ginjō, Tsukishima and Giriko. He knew that when Tsukishima inserts himself into his past, he would then be able to gather some information about what had really happened to Ginjō's murdered comrades. They also took measures to ensure that their true motives remained hidden from Tokinada's surveillance spirit bugs. When Tsukishima had learnt about the information from Yukio's past, he had immediately inserted his bookmark into Giriko and Ginjō so that he could transfer this information over to their memories. So effectively, it allows Ginjō and Giriko to already have an understanding of the alliance that is formed between Aura and Yukio, and their true motive, which was to deceive Tokinada. So with all of this backstory, it's no surprise that Ginjō was able to decide for himself who the real villain was here. His battle with Tokinada is a fight that is personal to him, and only him. It is a fight to settle his past. While Ginjō is crossing swords with his opponent, he answers Tokinada's earlier doubts. He states that even if he harbors suspicions over who the real culprit is, he has no doubt believing that Tokinada is capable of doing such an immoral act. Tokinada assures him that his hostility is justified. However, Ginjō has misunderstood one very important thing. Tokinada did not have Ukitake take orders from him. Instead, the now deceased captain had made the decision to sneak a surveillance device into the substitute Shinigami badge which Ginjō had owned. Tokinada then reveals that Ukitake, who was unaware of the Tsunayashiro family's cruelty and the truth about the fate of the Fullbringers, had unintentionally benefited the Tsunayashiro family through his decision of implanting that surveillance device into Ginjō's badge. Ginjō then voices his suspicions by asking if the Tsunayashiro family had used the surveillance device in order to murder his Fullbringer friends and then gather the fragments of the Soul King. Tokinada fiendishly confirms this, stating that he had interfered with the visual department's data in order to report to Ukitake that Ginjō had went mad killing the messenger Shinigami along with all of his own comrades. At first, Ukitake did not believe Tokinada, but as a result of this, Ginjō still became an enemy of the Shinigami and had ended up killing Ukitake's subordinates. Tokinada had considered telling Shunsui the truth, and he had even thought about blackmailing him by capturing his brothers, but he ended up hesitating, fearing that the newly appointed head captain may learn about his true motives. Tokinada also thought about confronting Ukitake, but he was concerned that the right arm of the Soul King, Mimihagi, may have intervened between them. As the battle continues, Ginjō unleashes a strong attack that rivals Ichigo's very own Getsuga Tensho, as he states that he should have killed Tokinada from the very beginning. Tokinada is able to deflect his opponent's blow by using an attack from Hisagomaru. He does so by transforming any injuries that he has sustained into an offensive strike. Now, this isn't enough to counter Ginjō's powerful attack, as As the battle continues, Tokinada and Ginjō meet one last time, where Ginjō is able to wound Tokinada severely by using his own iteration of the Getsuga Tensho. Now before Ginjō can deal the finishing blow with his longsword, Tokinada manages to escape. One of the key takeaways from the Can't For Your Own World light novels is that Ginjo Kugo was a possible candidate for being a Soul King replacement. Within volume 2 of the light novels, Tokinada states that Ginjō might be one of the few people who can handle the Zanpakuto known as Iko Mikidomoe. The light novels further emphasize Ginjō's role in unveiling Tokinada's true motives behind him wanting to craft a new Soul King. At the beginning of the 3rd volume of the light novels, we get a lengthy exposition about how the Tsunayashiro family had already begun their schemes to collect Soul King fragments. They are directly responsible for the death of multiple Fullbringers, one of whom was the father of Ora Michibane. These novels thus further emphasize the strained relationship between Ginjō and the Soul Society. It's evident multiple times throughout the story that Ginjō has harbored deep resentment for the Soul Society. It all stems from his substitute Shinigami badge which was being tracked, as he assumes that Ukitake must have planted it on him. This tracker that he was carrying around with him is what had ultimately led to the death of his comrades. At the very end of the novels, we get some closure regarding Ginjō's story. The new Captain Commander Shunsui pays a visit to the Fullbringers who are residing at the Shiba residence. Shunsui offers Ginjō a book that is authored by Ukitake called Warning of the Twin Fish. Though it is a simple gesture, the message conveyed here is that Shunsui wishes for Ginjō to know who Ukitake really was. The head captain further reveals that Ukitake was constantly asking Yamamoto and Shunsui to overlook the wrongdoings of Ginjō. Ginjō is of course reluctant to accept this gift, stating that he has no regrets about making the Shinigami his enemy, but Shunsui counters his statement by making a shocking revelation. He states that Ukitake was prepared to be killed by Ginjō. Even if Ukitake may have had ties to the Tsunayashiro family's plans, he did not use that as an excuse to relieve himself of his own guilt. Before Shunsui leaves, Ginjō then makes a final request, as he asks him the location of Ukitake's grave. While the Can't For Your Own World light novels are centered around the conflict between Tokinada and the members of the Gotei 13, the books also focus on a different conflict, namely the battle between the past and the future. It's heartwarming to know that despite all of the trauma that he had endured, Ginjō was able to at least find some closure after being suspicious of Ukitake for many years. That final line where he expresses his desire to visit the grave of Ukitake signifies his willingness to at least reconcile and let go of his past. At the end of volume 3 of Can't For Your Own World, we read that Hisagi is diligently performing his duties as a reporter for the Serete Bulletin. Whilst he is able to visit Hikone, he is also able to pay frequent visits to Ginjō and the other Fullbringers. Hisagi collects more information about the Tsunayashiro family so that he is able to expose their past evil deeds. I think that this is a fitting conclusion to the story, as we can see that all of Ginjō's efforts to find out the truth were not in vain in the end. In summary, one thing that's remained consistent with Ginjō's character is his unwavering resentment towards the Soul Society. Even after killing countless Shinigami, you would think that he would have had his revenge, but he was still determined to find out who was responsible for killing his comrades in the past. His confrontations with Tokinada in the light novels had shed so much light on several unexplored areas of his character, and by the end of the story, Ginjō's character arc is nicely wrapped up. He had suspected that Ukitake had played a major role in the murder of his comrades, but after learning the truth, it's heartbreaking to know that he never was able to reconcile with Ukitake. Hopefully this video has helped you to better understand why Ginjō had held such an intense resentment towards the Soul Society, as well as revealing key details about his role within the Can't For Your Own World light novels and the new information about his backstory that the novels reveal. So we've now reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What do you think about Tokinada and the Tsunayashiro family's plans? What are your thoughts about Ginjō's role in the Can't For Your Own World light novel? If there's anything that I've forgotten to mention about Ginjō, then definitely let me know in the comments. And do you theorize that Ginjō may have an opportunity to speak with Ukitake if the Bleach manga continues in the Hell arc? I think that the story has set itself up perfectly for Ginjō to intervene in some way and to have some role with Ukitake's character in the Hell arc. So continue the discussion in the comments, let me know all of your thoughts, and lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach video.
If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.